Minister predicts people's movement spike in this week's long holiday. BTN recorded strong financial performance amid pandemic pressure. Good afternoon, viewers. In Indonesia and Singapore, Market Headlines is ready to provide you a number of information from the business, economic, and capital market sectors. With me, Wicky Adrian. This is Market Headlines. The Minister of Transportation appealed to the public not to travel simultaneously on this week-long holiday. The minister predicts that it can cause a buildup of passengers in all modes of transportation.
Minister of Transportation Budi Karya Sumadi predicts that there will be a 20% spike in people's movement on this week's long holiday, starting from October 28th to November 1st. For this reason, Budi Karya urged the public not to travel simultaneously on the 27th night or 28th October because it has the potential to cause accumulation of passengers in all modes of transportation. However, the Transportation Ministry also asked transportation operators to prepare all health protocols rules strictly and add fleets if there is a build-up passengers.
Nah, oleh karenanya dua hal yang harus dilakukan. Tentu para operator siap dengan segala syarat-syarat yang harus dilakukan, protokol kesehatan, menetapkan jumlah pergerakan. Di sisi adalah juga saya menghimbau kepada masyarakat tidak semua pulang pada tanggal 27 malam dan tanggal 28. Kalau bisa ya sebagian pulang tanggal 29 lah. Jadi
to be able to oversee the implementation of health protocols in each region during the long holiday this week, the Ministry of Transportation ensures that it will coordinate with each regional transportation agency. From Jakarta, Wicky Adrian for IDX Channel.
INDEF's economic observer warned that the economic hit from the pandemic will be here for a long time, even as markets this week cheered promising vaccine development news. Whereas according to the research, vaccines will only help around 60% of national economy.
While markets reacted positively this week to promising news of potential coronavirus vaccines in development, INDEF's economic observer warned that the economic hit from the pandemic will be here for a long time. Therefore, the Research Institute suggested government not to rely too much on the vaccines as a way out to get out from the economic upheaval. According to Nailul Huda, as the economic observer of INDEF, the probability level of the vaccines on the national economy is only 60%.
Jadi saya sama tim INDEF itu juga setengah mengembangkan yang namanya pengaruh dari vaksin ke perekonomian. Nah, kalau dari data sementara yang kita hitung bahwa keberhasilan vaksin itu 60%. Jadi ketika kita bicara vaksin itu bisa menumbuhkan ekonomi, kita bicara probabilitas vaksin itu sendiri. Nah, kalau kita lihat bahwa probabilitas untuk vaksin itu ke pertumbuhan ekonomi itu cuma 60%. Artinya apa? Artinya bahwa ketika vaksin sudah ditemukan pun pertumbuhan ekonomi nggak akan melaju secepat sebelum pandemi. Nah, apabila ditemukan pada tahun 2021 vaksin itu ya, itu pertumbuhan ekonomi yang kita olah itu hanya mencapai paling tinggi itu 2,5%.
Therefore, Huda urged that the government to focus on educating people to comply with the health protocols instead and limiting the unimportant mobility. Stimulus in the form of direct cash assistance is also an option to boost people's purchasing power. Jakarta, Rizka Ayu Alfian for IDX Channel.
The Ministry of Finance noted that until mid-October 2020, the realization of tax incentives was still only 24.6% of the total budget allocation. Regarding this, the ministry asked the Directorate General of Taxes to continue socialize the incentives to increase the resilience of taxpayers in the midst of a pandemic.
Even though it has been several months running, tax incentives in the National Economic Recovery Program have only been realized below 30 trillion rupiah or 24.6% of the total allocation of 120.6 trillion rupiah. Finance Minister Sri Mulyani Indrawati also encouraged taxpayers to be able to take advantage of these incentives. Regarding the realization of the disbursement, Sri Mulyani said that it came from the incentive for income tax Article 21, or employee tax borne by the government, whose value had been realized 2.18 trillion. Then the income tax 22 import exemption had reached 7.3 trillion. Besides that, there were accelerated payment of restitution, incentives to reduce installment of up to 50%, which has reached 10.2 trillion rupiah. Then the government also reduces the corporate income tax.
Insentif perpajakan yang kita berikan 120,6 triliun meskipun sampai hari ini jumlah yang digunakan masih realisir di bawah 30 triliun atau 24,6%. Namun kita tetap akan berjuang untuk menyampaikan kepada seluruh wajib pajak bahwa pemerintah hadir untuk membantu mereka. Bantuan pemerintah bisa dalam bentuk insentif pajak, bisa dalam bentuk restrukturisasi.
The Directorate General of Taxes is asked to continue to work optimally amidst depressed tax revenue conditions, and at the same time, the government provides various incentives so that taxpayers can survive and recover. From Jakarta, Raharjo Patmo for IDX Channel.
In the midst of COVID-19 pandemic, the Directorate General of Taxes noted an increase in taxpayers who reported annual notification letters, where the number of annual notification reports reached 13 million in 2020.
President Joko Widodo has reaffirmed that Indonesia's future natural resources policy will focus on massive downstreaming to produce higher value products. In the coal's case, President conveyed several priorities for development of the coal derivative industry. Several priorities will be worked upon, such as Coal Gasifications Program or DMA, dimethyl ether to gasify the coal, acquirement for the petrochemical industry, and DME, which is very important as a substitute for LPG since Indonesia still imports it. Thus, it can reduce the LPG import. From all sources, IDX Channel.
Market headlines will be right back after the break. Stay tuned. Kepala BKPM Bahlil Hadalia bahkan mendorong investor untuk segera masuk ke kawasan industri yang disiapkan pemerintah.
Para investor datang yang bawa modal, datang yang bawa teknologi, biarlah pemerintah yang mengurus izinnya.
Market hari ini sudah dibuka dan menghijau begitu. Anda ada di zona positif, akankah ini terus berlanjut?
Saya masih mencermati untuk saham-saham ini ya, tambangan, saham alam putra nih ya, asli kan kemarin belum naik, ini potensi naik.
Sebetulnya industri hilir itu lokal itu udah siap. Jadi pemerintah juga nggak perlu lagi menarik investor untuk industri hilir. Jadi pemerintah cukup menarik investor untuk industri bahan baku.
Welcome back. President Joko Widodo ordered his cabinet ministers to set target to develop derivative industries for processing coal, hand in hand with setting agenda to reduce export of unprocessed coal.
The increase in reporting of annual tax returns is quite positive in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the 2020 spectacular event, Director General of Taxes Suryo Utomo revealed that the submission of tax returns in 2020 has increased from 12.8 million in 2019 to 13 million. Suryo said that the increase in annual tax notification letter submission in the midst of the pandemic is expected to be able to encourage and improve compliance in the field of taxation in the future. The General Director of Taxes also continues to disseminate information to the public regarding the implementation of the National Economic Recovery Program carried out by the government, including the provision of tax incentive.
Bahwa untuk tahun 2020, walaupun situasi pandemi COVID masih begitu luar biasa, penyampaian SPT tahunan di tahun 2020 alhamdulillah mengalami peningkatan dari 12.800.000 di tahun 2019, tahun ini dapat mencapai pada angka 13 jutaan.
The Ministry of Finance noted that the realizations of tax incentive is still low until October 2020. Tax incentive that have been distributed have not reached 30 trillion rupiah or have only reached 24.6% of the total budget of 120.6 trillion rupiah. From Jakarta, Rajo Patmo for IDX Channel.
Yeah, in short, President Joko Widodo asked his cabinet ministers to accelerate the development of the coal derivative industry. This aims to increase the added value of coal commodities, curb imports of industrial raw materials, and create job opportunities. The development of derivative industries or those included in industrial downstream activities must be considered as a big strategy. The question is Indonesia ready for that, and how is the condition so far for the derivatives? Therefore, live by Zoom, we are going to have further discussion with Hendra Sinadia, President Director of Indonesia Coal Mining Association. Hello, sir.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us here on Market Alliance. So talking about President Joko Widodo's order in terms of, developing a coal derivative industry in the near time. What is your perspective on this?
Okay, thank you. We fully understand the statement, the concern from President Jokowi on the urgency to develop coal derivative or coal downstream industry. And I think it should serve as a wake-up call, not only for the government, but for the coal miner itself. So for coal miners, this statement serves as a wake-up call that the trigger the industry to start exploring opportunity to invest in the coal downstream or coal derivative industry. While for the government, it's a time for the government to provide regulations and policy to support investment in the coal derivative industry. As we know that coal derivative or coal downstream, it requires huge capital and long-term and also highly risk. So it needs full support from the government at all levels.
Yeah. So since you're talking about the regulation that, so far that you mentioned that this derivative industry of coal in Indonesia needs a supportive regulation. So far, do we have sufficient policies to support that?
We've highly appreciated what the government has implemented. It is the first step. The government has introduced the mining law number 3, 2020, which provides some non-fiscal incentive in the law, especially for the CCOW company like to invest in the coal downstream. And also in the recently passed omnibus law that provides the fiscal incentive in royalty, 0% tariff royalty for the coal downstream. So this is the first positive start from the government. But we need, more comprehensive policy and regulation to support, to make the coal downstream investment to be feasible.
So in terms of omnibus law, this is the proactive gesture of government to give the sufficient policy in terms of developing coal downstream in Indonesia. So talking about the readiness of the industry, talking about the the hope that had been delivered by President Joko Widodo. So is the industry ready to develop the coal downstream industry further?
The position is we are ready whenever the government ready to provide some incentives and that we mentioned about it, incentive non-fiscal and fiscal, and also the roadmap. This is very important because we are going to embark to the new era of coal, transform coal from extracting coal for thermal coal-fired power plant, and then now we are going to transform the production of coal into more value added. So we are ready whenever the government ready to support with the policy and regulation that support the to make the investment economically feasible.
Yeah. Okay. So, Mr. Hendra, President Joko Widodo conveys priorities for development of coal derivative industries such as coal gasification or DME, and then syngas. Which one is can be prioritized by the industry, or which one is doable?
I think it's all up to the government because we are, as a contractor to the government, you're in the position to just to comply or follow what the government order us to do. So it's up to the government. But as I told you, that this is something that really new word for coal.
Hello, sir. Hello, Mr. Hendra. So talking about the readiness of coal industry to implement what actually President Joko Widodo ordered last Friday about the development of coal derivative industry, as Mr. Hendra said, that they are fully ready to implement what actually President Joko Widodo's request on them. And as Mr. Hendra mentioned, that they need actually comprehensive policies to support the growth of coal derivative industry. And right now we are facing the technical problem in terms of communication with Mr. Hendra Sinadia as the President Director of Indonesia Coal Mining Association. And our team is trying to reconnect with Mr. Hendra Sinadia to talking about the topic furthermore. Talking about the volume of production in coal in Indonesia, the number is quite large. Indonesia is actually well known as coal exporter, and the raw coal export year by year, the number is pretty much big. So the request of President Joko Widodo to minimize the number of export volume of raw coal will be implemented by the coal industry players by maximizing their derivative industry. So, Mr. Hendra, you're back on the line.
I lost you. Sorry.
We kind of
the line is cut off. Sorry.
We was losing you for a moment. Okay, so the readiness of the industry, you said that actually depends on government, correct?
Right, yeah.
So what is the next communication, or what is the next efforts that will be done or will be implemented together with government to realize what actually President Joko Widodo had ordered last Friday on the coal downstream industry?
Yeah, I think so. We need to have some comprehensive roadmap on the coal derivative industry, yeah, because it will be a long-term investment, and it requires support not only from the Ministry of Mines, but also other ministries, especially like in Ministry of Industry, Ministry of Finance, and other sectors. So it requires comprehensive roadmap. And also, we need to study on the market, potential market in the future, how to create the market. So the roadmap, comprehensive roadmap, is very urgent at this time. At the same time, the government also is drafting a draft of the government regulations on the implementation of the law number 3/2020. So this is something that going parallel. And we also have been invited by the government to provide the input on this. So we are ready to cooperate with the government to provide constructive input to make the investment in coal downstream feasible.
So one of the most important thing is the cooperation between stakeholders to develop the coal downstream industry. Mr. Hendra, thank you very much for joining us here on Market Headlines. Good luck for you. And stay with us on Market Headlines, because we'll be right back after this break.
Kemajuan di dalam digital banking itu meningkat. Ini menunjukkan bahwa digitalisasi is here to stay.
Nama saya Devisa Novel. Jabatan saat ini di IDX Channel adalah sebagai produser dan sekaligus presenter program yang dibawakan saat ini dengan nama IDX Second Session Closing, terkait juga dengan kondisi capital market Indonesia dan perkembangannya dari waktu ke waktu. Dan saya sangat senang untuk belajar dan berkecimpung di berita ekonomi, khususnya di capital market.
Saat ini lebih mudah untuk mendapatkan informasi mengenai perkembangan ekonomi dan bisnis di Indonesia dengan aplikasi IDX Channel. Mulai dari berita, makro dan mikroekonomi, politik hingga hiburan. Anda juga dapat berbagi artikel, foto, dan video ke semua platform media sosial yang Anda miliki. Beragam informasi hari ini bisa di-download di dalam aplikasi idxchannel.com. IDX Channel, Your Trustworthy Economic, Business, and Capital Market Channel.
Welcome back. At the Jakarta Composite Index intraday movement earlier today, JCI was open at the level of 5,128.31. Then approaching the closing time of the first session, the index was on the level of 5,148.58. Then the index was showing strengthening trend, but the second session closing time index was closed at the level of 5,144.04. In short, JCI went up 0.62%. And this is the sectoral movement of today's trading. And this is the top gainers for today's trading. Continued with the top losers for today's trading. And we're going to see the movement of rupiah towards US dollar for today's trading. The COVID-19 task force is continuously boosting PCR tests to be in accordance with WHO target as much as 1 in 1,000 population per week The task force noted that currently PCR test has already reached 82.51% of WHO target.
Indonesian government through COVID-19 task force is continuously boosting the COVID-19 testing capacity to achieve WHO recommendation target as much as 1 in 1,000 population per week. Spokesperson for COVID-19 task force Wicky Adrian said that with the assumption of 267 million population, then the recommendation target of WHO is 267,000 per week for Indonesia. Meantime, currently the COVID-19 testing through PCR test has reached 82.51% of target.
Pemerintah terus berupaya untuk meningkatkan kapasitas dan jumlah pemeriksaan COVID-19 untuk dapat mencapai target rekomendasi WHO yaitu 1 berbanding 1.000 penduduk per minggu. Perkembangan pemeriksaan COVID-19 di Indonesia ini terus mengalami peningkatan yang cukup signifikan. Di minggu ketiga Oktober ini, kita telah berhasil mencapai 82,51% dari target WHO. Kita harus mengapresiasi semua pihak bahwa hanya dalam beberapa bulan saja kita sudah mendekati targetnya WHO.
Wicky added that previously in June 2020, Indonesia was only able to conduct testing for 16.8% of WHO target. Therefore, regarding this positive achievement, the task force appreciates all parties, even though there are still many problems or obstacles, such as logistic transportation, specimen delivery, and reporting of testing results. From Jakarta, Ade Firmansyah for IDX Channel.
And step aside from market condition as coronavirus pandemic takes big role on current economic situation. And here it is an update data about coronavirus globally. And the news close our market lines today. Please enjoy our next program on IDX Channel, Your Trustworthy Economic, Business and Capital Market Channel. And before saying goodbye, I would like to remind you on what Mom said. Please do comply with health protocol by using mask, physical distancing, and avoid crowd. Also washing your hands often with soap through overflowing water. And I'm Wicky Adrian. Have a nice evening and stay safe.